A warm welcome to today's webinar, Get Your Super Sorted, something that all of us throughout our lives need to check in and make sure that we're building a nice sized nest egg for our future. Just as some background, for those of you not familiar, 10,000 Girls are not-for-profit social enterprise geared to improve the financial well-being of as many women across Australia as we can. We do this by hopefully making finance social and fun. For those of you familiar with our 6-step program, we always talk about setting goals first. If you don't know what type of lifestyle you want to live and the key goals and things that activities that you want to do throughout your life, it's very hard to work backwards and to accurately work out what size nest egg you need to be building. So if you haven't before, check out this 6-step program or check out some of the free resources on our website, and just make sure before you make any major decisions about super or investing outside of super that you're really clear on your personal goals. The second step we take people through in the full program is about taking check of where you currently are. We need to know what our spending patterns are, what's our net worth, how are we managing our debt, what does our insurance look like. These are our financial foundations. Then the 6-step program goes into investing basics, so learning the principles behind risk and return and investing in cash, property and shares. Then we talk about the importance of stretching our minds right into the future, and this is a bit what we're going to cover today about super. And then in step 6, we talk about building a really strong support network and making sure we fill our lives with inspiration and motivation to stay on track. So as I said, today we're going to touch on a little of what we cover in step 5. And for those of you who don't know sort of our broader premise of how we operate, everyone who does the full 6-step program, which you can do online, the next round is starting in February, or you can do it in a gig, a girl investment group. Each of the women that do the 6-step program contribute to a microfinance loan. So we talk about the importance of improving your financial foundations, not only for you personally and the impact that has on your family and sort of immediate network, but globally. As we increase our own financial capacity, we can have huge impact on strengthening the global economy. So thanks to our generous partners, we have a financial literacy grant through ASIC. Rabobank support us to run workshops right across regional Australia. We work with the Financial Planning Association of Australia, with the Insurance Council and with the Australian Tax Office. And today our special webinar partner is HESTA. So thanks to these generous partners, we are able to deliver these programs really cost effectively. And so I hope you enjoy this as part of this webinar series. So HESTA, our expert Danielle will explain a little more, but HESTA is an industry super fund, really geared to the medical industry, but open to anyone who likes the ideas and values and offerings HESTA has. It's interesting because HESTA shares a lot of values with 10,000 Girl in that they are very focused on consumer education and empowering their members, who are a lot of women, because working in the caring and nursing industries, there is a lot of women in those industries. And the HESTA Super Fund has some fabulous learning resources on their website, which I'm sure Danielle will take us through. So I want to welcome Danielle. Danielle, thank you very much for joining us today. Before we get cracking, can you tell us a bit about you? Why are you so passionate about doing what you do?
I guess going back to that word empowerment that you just used, I feel that there's so much information in the finance world that's so confusing. And when you just provide the education or the information to members or to the general public, they can start to make some decisions which will make a huge difference to their future, particularly in their retirement.
Great. So that's exactly what we'll be covering today. And we say whether your superannuation is a pile of unopened envelopes gathering in a corner, or if you have an Excel spreadsheet to die for, there'll be something for everyone. And please ask questions along the way. Danielle's going to take us through some of the fundamentals, and then we're going to open it up, and as well as answering some questions that people have sent through previously. So thank you for joining us, and again, welcome to Danielle. And as I said, and for those of you who have just logged on, we're using the question box. So feel free as we go along to share your question or even an ideas or thoughts or tips you have from your experience, and we'll weave those into the conversation. If we don't get to your question, we are going to stay on for a little longer than the set hour, so you're welcome to stay online with us. Alternatively, we'll make sure that we circulate some resources so we cover all the basics. So just a quick quiz before we start. How many super funds do you have? So I'm going to put a poll up, and it's all anonymous. It's just for our own interest and everyone on the webinar to see that everyone is in all different situations, and no matter where you are in terms of your super, you will there are opportunities for everyone to improve it. So some results still coming in. Just give it 30 more seconds, and we'll close it off and share the results. So 18% of people have only ever had one super fund. Great. So 73% of you have already consolidated into one or two funds, which is fabulous. And then there's a few people who have a few extra super funds. So that's an enormous percentage, and obviously you're all engaged enough to be educating yourself and making sure that your super is best utilized. But that's a great result. So Danielle, I'll leave you to do a bit of a disclaimer. I know that we can't give personal financial advice, but we can offer some help, right?
We can give general advice, general information, and education. So some of the questions that come through, if it's too specific, I can't take in the person's personal circumstances. So I'll have to decline on the specific answer, but keep in mind that we can do general information during the session.
Great, thank you. So I'll throw it to you, Danielle, to take us through some of the basics, and then we'll open up to questions as they come in.
Okay, thanks. I guess the very simple slide we have up there now just is really to talk about, super and at what rate is the compulsory amount that your employer must put into your fund. And this has changed. Over the years, it started at 3%, came in at 7 for a while, and it sat at 9% for many, many years. And during that time, you had a lot of organizations like HESTA, the industry funds, all lobbying to get that increased, because the concern was that 9% of income put away for your retirement was not going to be enough to get you to a comfortable retirement. A lot of the funds looked at pushing for a level of 15%, but a couple of years ago we were lucky enough that the government did agree to increase that. The increase was to 12% over a gradual period. So it moved to 9.25%, 9.5%, and then the new government came in, put a freeze on the increase, and now it won't move again to the year 2020, and it won't be at 12% to the year 2026. So the first tip there is to think about, well, is that enough of your income going into super? And if not, we'll talk about ways in a moment about how to boost that, increase it for your retirement. Okay. Now, one of the things we said we'd cover off, and I guess to kind of set the stage, is to get you to think about how important your super is in your retirement. For most of us in Australia, our superannuation is going to be our nest egg. Some people have other investments or property, etc. But for most of us, it's going to be super. Now, the first thing you see up there on that slide is some information, dollar amounts. And where this comes from, and what it is this a survey that's done by ASFA, which is the Association for Superannuation in Australia. And they do a survey of retirees, and they work out how much money you will need per fortnight for a modest lifestyle and a comfortable lifestyle. Now, the dollar amounts I have up in front of you is for a comfortable lifestyle. So what we're saying is that someone who is single and own their own home going into retirement would need just over $1,600 a fortnight for a comfortable lifestyle. Now let me point out to you the difference between comfortable and the modest amount that you, for a modest lifestyle. Comfortable means overseas travel once every 5 years, a holiday every year, eating out from time to time, owning a nice car, private medical cover, nice beer or wine with your meals, or whenever you want it actually. But a modest lifestyle, which is comes in a much lower amount, does not include a lot of that. It doesn't include eating out, holidays. It really is a very basic lifestyle. If you look at the next slide, flick over, you can see some dollar amounts that are provided. This is for the age pension. So presently, if you're getting the full age pension from the government, $860 per fortnight for a single, and couple just under $1,300. Big difference there between comfortable lifestyle and the dollar amount for the pension. Now, keep in mind that right now the ability to get the age pension is pretty flexible, and we would expect that a lot of our members looking at this in today would say, okay, well, I would like to achieve a comfortable lifestyle, and I'll do that by using my own money through super and getting some age pension. So it is achievable. But this is just to give you some dollar amounts to think about, because you have people on the news, Zoe, that talk about, you need millions of dollars and etc. Well, maybe you do, and no, you don't. So keep in mind that it's achievable to get comfortable. You just have to take some actions, and the sooner the better. Next slide. Now, I just wanted to put up some. On the next slide, it just shows the age, because I wonder, a lot of people are saying, well, when can I get to my age pension? And this has changed. So back in 1908, when they created the pension, it was age 65 that you could apply. And it's changed a little bit for women over the years, but presently, if you are born after December 1956, you can't apply for the age pension until age 67. There's also a lot of talk that will be moved to 70 in the near future, and I would be very surprised if it doesn't. So the exciting news here is that because we're living longer, we can now work longer and look forward to a retirement not starting till you're in your 70s. Woohoo! Next. Okay, so as I mentioned, boosting your super is a good idea, so you have more money at retirement. And the two ways you're going to do that is where you invest your superannuation and also just putting more in. So two ways that you can put money into your superannuation is before tax, or pre-tax, or known as salary sacrifice, or doing after-tax contribution. So if you're going to do it before tax, you need to let your employer know, because obviously it's being pre-tax, it comes out before you're paid and your income tax is removed. When it comes over into your super fund, it will be taxed at 15%. That's the contributions tax. So this is where you need to look at your marginal tax rate to see, now, is it worthwhile for me to make a before tax contribution? For example, both my sons are, working, but neither of them are bringing in the kind of money where they're actually paying tax. So for them to make a pre-tax contribution would cost them 15%. In their case, they would be better off making an after-tax contribution, which does not get taxed, again, going into super. You've already paid income tax on that. A lot of employers will make after-tax contributions for you, make that request. But nowadays, it's just as easy to set up a direct debit or do BPay it into your account. Next slide. Now, just to let you know, there are some caps on how much you can put into super. And a few of you are probably going, whoa, 30,000, 35,000 pre-tax is not a problem. But do keep in mind that the contribution made by your employer is a pre-tax or before tax contribution. Therefore, it's what they put in and what you salary sacrifice combined that has to be less than 30,000 a year if you're under 49 and 35,000 if you're over. After-tax contributions also have a cap. It's 180,000 a year. Although, we laugh saying, ooh, who's got that kind of money? Well, I'll tell you, in both circumstances, what we're seeing nowadays with before tax contributions, some of our members who are getting close to retirement, maybe in a dual income situation, and that allows them to live off one income and then put the other into super. So you do see people trying to max up to their contribution cap. Very importantly, this usually involves the final exit of dependents. And I say final exit because we have this whole new situation of boomerangers that are returning home to live with their parents so that they can save money up for a deposit for an apartment or a house. And it's difficult. And by the way, this is actually making a lot of changes in superannuation results for members, because they can't put additional money in because they're supporting dependents longer. That reduces what they'll have at retirement. Without, yes.
So would people also, like you mentioned, someone, and this might be more relevant for a couple if they live from one salary and put the other salary into tax. Also, would people put chunks of money in if they sell an asset and want to, when they're nearing retirement, want to put it into super because it's more tax effective? So for those of you who are thinking, oh, I'm never going to have, that second salary to put into super, sometimes it just comes from an inheritance or a sale of some other assets. Would that be right?
Yeah, that's true. In fact, that's where we most see a large amount coming in after tax is for an inheritance. Because think about parents, people are living longer, so parents are dying and leaving money or property to children who are close to retirement. There is a rule with after tax that allows you to bring 3 years ahead, so up to 540,000 in one go. So, for example, I'm based in Sydney, so I just spoke with a gentleman a couple of weeks ago who sold the property that his mother left to him and his sister, and they had well over $1 million house, and so they're going to put that whole chunk into super. The investment for them, what the profit that they would receive is much higher, and from a tax benefit as well, because they're not being taxed in with the money going into super.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Now, just one quick thing about the caps. If you go over the caps, the amount that you go over will be taxed at the highest marginal tax rate. So the benefit of having the money going in is depleted. So just keep that in mind. So keep your caps where they are.
So really, you need to understand your marginal tax rate and the tax implications of putting money in super and working out what's most beneficial. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And in most cases, pre-tax is the way to go. You've got more money going in and then more money on the way out, but not always. And one of them is the tax consideration, and the other one is on the next slide. And that's if you are eligible for the government's co-contribution. So this is the matching system where they match you 50 cents to your dollar up to you contributing up to $1,000, which means that if you're eligible for the full amount, they'll put a $500 amount in for you each year, which is great. However, the way this works is that your income has to be below around $35,000 a year for them to match you the full 50 cents to the dollar. For every dollar of income that you earn above that amount, they reduce what they pay you by 3.33 cents, which means that if your income is above 50,000, you're not eligible. And this is for our lower income earners to try to get them to put some more money into super. It's a fantastic benefit, and know that more women get the co-contribution than men for numerous reasons. But the biggest one is that we tend to have broken work patterns. We stop working to take care of a family, and nowadays it's not just raising children; it also includes elderly parents. So you're leaving work. And we tend to work more part-time than men as well.
That's especially like $500 might not seem a lot now, but over a 10, 20, 30-year time frame, it can mean tens of thousands of dollars, can't it? So that's the magic in super, that it's the small things we do along the way that can make the big impact to our nest egg down the track.
And keep in mind, Zoe, it can be every year. So every year you're getting $500 extra into your super. That's going to make a massive difference.
Yeah, exactly. So someone said less than 50K super exclusive.
Yeah, it caps out the cap for that reduction after 34,545. It just under 50. So over 50, you're what the government considers a high income earner. So you're not eligible for this arrangement.
So I think the question's saying 50K in your super. No, it's around earning what you earn 50. If you earn less than 50K, and there's lots of information and the sliding scale on the ATO website, isn't there, Danielle?
Yes, I'm sorry. It's your income below 50,000 per year, and that's pre-tax.
Great.
Okay. Another great way of boosting your super, and this has came up to our first poll, Zoe, was consolidating. The idea about consolidation is to choose the fund that's best for you, and put all your money, or roll everything into the one fund. The reason for that is wherever you have money sitting in super, you are paying fees. And in some situations, the fees can be very high. So reduce that by consolidating. And we can talk about this more, but what the reasons that you look for with consolidation, or the fund that you choose, is the insurance cover, what you're paying in fees, what you're paying in premiums. And by the way, fees should not be the main reason that you use that fund. It might have low fees, but you need to also look at where your money is invested and how the returns are going as well. I just want to give you one tip about consolidating. A couple things to keep in mind. You have insurance cover attached to your super. We'll talk about that in a minute. And if you close that fund, you will not have that cover. Keep in mind, though, you're not receiving that cover for free, and you're paying premiums. In some cases, it can be quite high. The second thing is that some of the funds, particularly the older ones in the retail area, have penalty rates or exit fees that can be so high they keep you from taking your money out. And I'll give you an example. Some of the older funds with the organization that starts with A, ends with P, can't really say, it has 3 letters. They have arrangements where it's a percentage of your account that's the exit fee, which is fine when you've got $200 sitting in there. But when you've got 200,000 or like even 20,000, it gets to be too high. So my tip here is that before you roll any money out of a fund, check to see if there's an exit fee and work out if it's okay for you to do that.
Great.
Another one is looking for lost super. There's millions of dollars sitting on the registry for lost super. And the problem is that if you move around a little bit and you say, oh, wow, I know I work somewhere, I think I've got money out there, and you're not receiving an annual statement from that particular fund, you may have been considered a lost member, and therefore they have gotten rid of you and registered you with the ATO's lost registry. And it's very easy to have a look at. For example, most of the industry funds will have on their website a way to just help you find it. The HESTA is on there on the slide, but another one, if you're not a HESTA member, is superseeker.com.au, and there's a few out there. And the idea is that what it does is it uses your tax number to trace any money you might have sitting on super. And even if you're not sure, it doesn't cost you anything to look, so it's worth having a try it. My coworker recently found $30 from her Pizza Hut days, and she was thrilled. She rolled that over, by the way. But I speak to people all the time, and I had one woman not too long ago tell me that she found $20,000. And my first reaction is like, how do you lose that kind of money? But in this case, where she had worked, her employer had went out of business, and when she went back to find out where her money was, there was no one there to speak to. Just keep in mind, there's some organizations that from time to time send letters out to people saying that we've located lost super for you, and for a small fee, they'll help you retrieve it. Don't pay that, and they won't tell you how much you have in there, by the way, because you're more intrigued to use their service. There's another one that they're perfectly legit, but you can do it for free. And the second one is there's a scam going around using ANZ to try to get information from you and super details. So please be aware of that one as well.
And you can also use if you're set up with MyGov, you can do it through there as well now, can't you?
Yeah, and it's very easy, very, very easy with MyGov.
Great.
Do you want to just pause there to see if there's any questions about contributions before we talk about insurance?
Yeah, so there's a few questions that have come through. One that we get quite often, and it's I'll just read it out. I'm not an Australian citizen, but I'm working here for a few years. If I do move back to my home country, the UK, am I able to take my super with me, or is it locked in Australia? If I can take it with me, are there any penalties, tax or otherwise, involved? I know we have a big group of people that have come from all different parts of the world, and so to understand, how the Australian super industry exists and how it works, and also what are the implications if you leave again.
Yeah, well, really, it depends on your status as well. So if you're here under a 457 visa and you're a temporary resident, then you can take your super with you, and you should, because if you don't get it out, I think in enough period of time, the government will then just keep it. Keep in mind, though, they will tax you quite a bit on when you take it out. If, however, you're a permanent resident, you cannot take your money out, because the fear that the government has is that you will return, and because you have no money for your retirement, you'll rely on them for your pension. So, yeah, you'll have to check your status before you can, if you can take your money with you.
Okay, does that
So,
help answer that one? And there's a few people asking if they can get a copy of the slides. And yes, we'll send through the slides and some other resources as well. And then there was, so the question about, do I put a whole lump of inheritance in super, or, what do I do with it? And so we might cover that in the next question. Or do you have any words of wisdom around planning? And maybe that's got to do with different phases that people are in.
yeah. Keep in mind that whatever you contribute to super is locked in until you hit your preservation age. So if you're born after 1965, that's age 60. So if you do receive a large chunk of money and you put it in, one, you can't get it till you hit that age, and then have another trigger of release. So, and we get questions a lot around, well, can I put my money in there, earn a lot, and then take it out for something else? Just keep that one in mind, because that will prevent you from doing that. And then other issues around Centrelink and how super is considered as well is important.
So someone said, can I check the tax benefit of after-tax contributions? If someone gets an inheritance of $100,000, what's the benefit of not putting it in the bank?
Well, in the bank, you're going to be taxed on that, because you'll be on the interest that you'll be earning on that money. Now, keep in mind that the profits that you earn on your super is taxed at 15%. So in most cases, that's a conditional tax rate that's worth considering.
So it's about understanding and probably mapping out, well, what's your marginal tax rate? And if it is below, well, if you're in the bottom, the sort of tax-free threshold, well, then you might be okay doing things outside of super. But if you are nearing retirement, especially, and have a higher marginal tax rate, then really it is effective to only pay the 15% tax on income earned within your super fund. Otherwise, you are paying a higher marginal tax rate.
Yes.
Someone said, born in 1962, what is preservation age? Does that mean I can have access to all my super at that age?
No, if you're born before 1960, it's 55. Then it goes up by 1 year, so 56, 57 for 62. But just because you hit that special age doesn't mean that you can just grab your super. You actually have to have a trigger of release, such as retirement, putting your money into an allocated pension, etc.
And then as people reach actually retirement age, and please correct me, Danielle, if I'm wrong, but then people do have the option of pulling out lump sums. But we have to be very aware that if we do that, then we're looking at living on the pension, and what could be really even more slim pickings by the time the longer, as all the baby boomers start to retire, and we have less taxpayers supporting a larger, longer living retired population. The idea behind pulling out a lump sum might seem fun for the short term, but really thinking long term, how long are you going to live and what kind of lifestyle do you want? Because as Danielle shared earlier, living on the pension is really slim pickings. And for those people who know people living on the pension, it's borderline, isn't it?
Yeah. And we have more people in retirement living below the poverty line at
Mm.
this point. Think about, as you mentioned, the baby boomers coming through are going to shift our population. Demographics are going to change. We're going to have more people in retirement, more people wanting it longer as we live longer, and less people working to provide the tax to cover our pensions.
So that's effectively why the government have set up, superannuation as a really sort of tax effective vehicle to be putting our money. And so, for those of you who we often get questions like, is super safe and won't it be changed? And, is it really my money? It is your money and your fund. It's just that it's in a tax effective environment because it's the way the government is trying to incentivize us to save for our own and support ourselves as much as possible into retirement.
Yeah. And keep in mind, if you retire at age 55, you're not eligible for the age pension to age 67. That's a long time to be funding your retirement.
Yeah, great. Okay, so let's talk about insurance and then go through some of the specific questions that have come through.
Okay. With insurance, there's personal insurance that's attached to super, and there'll be variations on what your super provides. So the three that you will find in Super World is income protection, lump sum total and permanent disability, and death cover. So your fund may or may not provide you with income protection. If they don't, you'll find that you have TPD, and vice versa. All funds will provide death cover. So income protection is what it says. It protects you by providing an income if you're off work based on an injury or an illness. All income protection policies will have a waiting period. The standard is 90 days. So you're off work for 90 days. Hopefully you have enough sick leave and holiday leave to cover you during that time. But after that, if you're off work, then you're covered with your income protection. Now, most policies will go for 2 years. And the reason for that is income protection is created to protect their members for temporarily being out of work. And the hope is that you'll be back to work within 2 years. But not all funds. So some funds have income protection that cover you for a longer period of time. So the other one, which is TPD, and we say it's a lump sum. So you are injured, you're permanently and not returning to the workforce, and then you will receive a lump sum of money. And in a lot of cases, that's very beneficial because one, you'll use that money to live on until you hit retirement age, or if you need to, I don't know, put a wheelchair ramp in or something like that into your home, you might need that money. The concern I have with TPD is that it's for total and permanent disability, so that it doesn't cover you if you're off work for 6 months or a year. So ideally, in my opinion, is that you would have cover for income as well as permanent disability. So have a look at your policy and say, well, what am I getting and how much cover do I have? Most funds that I know of will give you the opportunity to increase your cover, and it's generally more cost effective to have this cover through your super because the premiums are coming off your fund, so you're not actually feeling it so much in your pocket, and you're getting a group discount. But keep in mind that at any time that you increase your insurance, that insurers are by nature are very suspicious people. So they assume that you just got told something very important about your health, and that's the reason why you're doing it. So they will ask you to fill out a form, and depending on what you write on that form, it may trigger a request by the insurer for you to get a physical or for them to speak with your doctor, etc. So again, my tip here is that if you look at your cover, work out if that's a sufficient cover for you, and if you need to increase it, the sooner you get onto it, the better. Yeah, and I'll give you a personal example. I have plantar fasciitis in my right foot, which I don't suffer from anymore, but it's a typical, really sore foot that women my age get. And I had to write down on my form that I'd been to the doctor over the last year for this, blah, blah, blah. So in my policy, I increased my cover, but if I'm off work due to anything to do with my plantar fasciitis, then I will not be covered by the income protection. I'm not too worried. It's not a work stopping issue for me, so I'm not concerned. But that's what things that they can knock you back. And quite frankly, if you do have something that's quite serious, they probably will not increase your cover. Death cover is simply what it is. It covers you, it provides you with some money in the case of your death to your beneficiaries. And the important thing to note here is that payment to your beneficiaries is done a little bit differently in Super World than just like with your will. And that's because you need to nominate where your money goes. You need to tell the trustee of your fund where you want your money to go, who your beneficiaries are. And if you just go online and nominate beneficiaries or do that with a form on your first day of work, you're doing what we call a preferred beneficiary arrangement, which means that you're telling the trustee of your fund who you prefer to receive the money. Keep in mind, though, that in that arrangement, the trustee has ultimate discretion, which means that they can override who you nominate and pay the money to somebody else. And the reason why that exists is that, unfortunately, people don't keep this information updated. For example, I tell guys all the time, nothing ticks off your second wife more than your first wife still being your beneficiary. And that's because day one you fill it in, but you don't go back to, and you don't think about changing it, or men certainly don't. Generally, women do. So keep that in mind. Now, the other thing, too, is if you don't like that discretion being held with the trustee, you and most funds will allow you to have a binding arrangement. And this is arrangement that, as long as the form that you fill out is correct, then they are bound by law to pay to whom you nominate. So you'd have to go onto your fund's website and print the beneficiary form for binding nomination. You have to update it generally every 3 years, so the trustee is assured that it is current and that's what you wish. And if you find that you have a little bit of a difficult arrangement, you can also bind your nomination to your estate, and then your will take over and dictate where the money is then distributed.
There's a few insurance questions that have come in, Danielle. Can I read them out and you weave them into
Sure.
our question? So someone said, when investigating income protection with my super fund, I've been given a schedule of contributions that it is needed to be extra to my super. Is this tied up with the amount I earn, i.e. I can't get my current wage because I don't have enough super? So that's one question. Someone else has said, does income protection typically cover mental illness? And someone's also said, so this first question we may or may not be able to answer because it's quite specific to your personal circumstance, but Danielle, I'm sure, can answer conceptually. And then income protection covering mental health and mental illness. And then the third one is, in insurance details, there are references units of cover or fixed cover. Can we explain that a bit?
Okay, we'll start with that one. Okay, so it depends on how the fund is and who the insurer is attached to the fund. So if it's units, the unit amount is set. So say a unit is worth $25,000, and you have an option of how many units you can have. There'll be a standard, like a default, maybe 2 units or 4 units, and usually there's options for you to increase that. So what you, in that circumstances, as always, you look at your debts and dependents and work out, well, how much cover do I need to be, for income protection if I'm not going to be working? And then you request it to increase it by unit amount. A fixed amount, sometimes you'll see it might be like 2 times your income. So whatever your salary is, it's 2 times or 4 times. Or it can be $100,000, and that's the cap of some sort. What you'll find with income protection is that the amount that you're paid will never exceed usually 75 or 85% of your full income, because the insurer wants you to return to work. So if you are receiving a lot of money, or you're more comfortable not working, then you don't have that incentive. That's their opinion. The other thing to keep in mind,
Danielle, that make sure if you don't understand anything about either questions about how your money's invested or about insurance in super, call the super fund. All the good leading super providers now have are offering, phone and online FAQs to make sure that their members have the most relevant insurance and investment choices, and are engaged. And so if you do have questions that we can't answer, make sure you give your super fund a call.
absolutely. And that's what, as a member, that's what you're paying for as well, is for them to help you make that decision and help empower you. Yeah, so there are a couple of around the insurance questions. So it could be I don't understand about the contributions. I'm a little bit confused. I think it might be that they're saying that if you increase your cover, the premiums are so high that the amount coming off your super is more than what you're contributing. So that might be the concern there. You'd have to get some personal advice around that. And again, your fund should be able to provide that basic information to you. So the other question?
Yeah, just that does income protection typically cover mental illness?
Typically, yes, but you have to check with your fund.
Also, then someone also has said, I'm actually on income protection from my super fund. I was doing a little job at the time of the accident, so I'm not receiving as much as my normal wage would have been. If I'd chosen a set amount at the time, what would have happened?
It depends. What they generally look at is if you're working part-time, they're looking, for example, they're saying, okay, if your income protection is a percentage of your salary, for example, then it would be reduced because your working hours and your income is reduced. And I think that's what it sounds like here. She was only working less hours, and therefore her income was less, and they're basing how much she receives on that amount at the time of her injury.
Okay. There's another good question that's come through that we get asked a lot. If you have more than one super fund, there's no point in having insurance with more than one?
Well, it's first of all, income protection. If you have more than one policy, they will never, ever, ever pay out on a second or more policy. Now, so whatever fund that if you have it in 2 funds or you have it outside of super, you're paying for something which can be expensive that you'll never use. So be very careful. And the reason why is, again, it goes back to that incentive for you to return to work. If you're getting 75% of your income from one policy while you're off work and say 50% from another, then you're making more money not working than working, so they don't like to do that. However, keep in mind though, with death cover and total and permanent disability cover, generally they'll pay out on more than one fund.
But again, make sure you're really clear on your policy and have had a conversation with the fund, because you don't want to be paying multiple premiums and not being able to benefit if you need to down the track, right?
That's right. And some people will say, I'm not going to close roll my one fund because I get insurance cover here, I'll get insurance cover there. That's a sort of choice that some people make. But sometimes it's cheaper for you to increase the cover in one super fund and then stop paying the premiums for both. But it really is a personal situation.
Yeah, so
And some funds allow you to transfer that amount as well, so it's a smooth transition. You don't have to go through the whole rigmarole of the application.
So that's another good thing if you are consolidating super funds or comparing super funds, to ask about that, isn't it? So this is a question that leads on, and then we'll go into some other questions that people sent through previously. Did you say that depending on your health conditions, you may get knocked back for increasing your income protection?
Yes, that's true. And I spoke with a woman 2 weeks ago who had just been diagnosed with breast cancer, and she asked me because she wanted to increase her cover, and I said it's not my decision; it's the insurers, and I know she would not get approved.
So someone said if you've taken a break from work, for example, to be a mum, are you eligible for income protection?
Yes, you are. It depends. Now, some funds will, you're still a member of the fund and you're covered. So check. And outside of insurance, one of the things that people forget to do is, if you're not working and you're not in a fund and you don't have, say, example, total and permanent disability cover, as a working parent, you should consider having the cover. If you think about, if something happens to you, and your surviving spouse needs to, or surviving, if you're not able to do anything around the house anymore or raise your children, the cost of bringing someone else in to provide that service is quite high. So keep in mind that just because you're not employed in a session, you're still working at home and you're still valuable and you still need to cover.
Great, thank you. So keep your questions coming in. Have we covered this one, or is there anything further we want to add to insurance, Danielle? Otherwise, we'll move on to the next question.
Yeah, only thing I would mention on this question, it talks about moving to another fund and keeping it open. Just if you have any reason to be concerned that you're going to not get the cover in another fund or something, never ever close your fund or close your insurance until you have what you need in place. So make sure everything is in place before you do that, because sure enough, something will happen in that gap that you'll need the extra cover and you won't be entitled to it.
So pretty much make sure that you've got all your insurances and stuff in place, then roll over money out of different accounts.
That's right. Everything in place first.
Great. How about some planning tools if we want to, make sure we're on track?
Yeah, there's almost all the funds, good ones, will have calculators that you can go on and do some projections, which are great. And they'll take in assumptions for inflation and things. But I would, and as you would too, probably, Zoe, is recommend the Money Smart site. And I imagine that will be coming up in the materials for everyone to look at.
Yeah, we'll
they've got
the Money Smart Retirement Planner, which is great because you can put in your scenario and then you can slide around different bars and change the graph around, whether, how about if I worked a couple of years longer? How about if I added an extra $100 a month? How about if I, my income goal increased or decreased? How about if I put after-tax contributions? It's a great calculator that you can play live with all the variables until you can make sure that that you're on track to your goal. It's on the moneysmart.gov.au website and it's called the Retirement Planner, but we'll send through the link.
Yeah, not to forget the women's toolkit as well on their website.
Great.
Yeah. Is super safe? You remember, super itself is not an investment. You invest your superannuation, and there was a lot of concern. I guess the last time the markets really collapsed was the global financial crisis, and a lot of people lost money. And, I mean, everybody did because you find your investments decreased. The worry is that if you had actually um, moved your money, say you had invested in shares, it dropped significantly over a couple of weeks, and then you either took the money out or you moved it to like a more defensive style of investment. What you did then was you crystallized your loss. Um, when it's at one point it's on like almost like a paper loss, but until you actually move it or remove it, you are crystallizing it. Um, Interesting though, if for all the people who were invested in the more aggressive growth assets that were heavily affected by the GFC, if they had stayed in where they were now, they'd be much better off. Um, so you got to keep in mind that the markets will move up and down, and depending on which asset class that you're invested in, it will have more volatility. Higher volatility means higher risk. But if you are investing for the long term and you can ride out those lows, historically you are better off being more aggressive in your investment. A couple of things to keep in mind with super. The old rule of pick and stick seems to be better than the chasers. So chasers are people who say, "Oh, look at investments are doing really well in property. I'll move my money there. Oh, no, 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 now it's cash. I'll move to cash. No, no, now it's fixed interest." The worry about that is that you are chasing the market and moving around. The best thing to do is do a risk profile, understand what you like to do with investments, get advice from someone who is like legal advice, licensed advice, not necessarily someone who thinks they know about the markets, and be comfortable with your investment.
Yeah, great. So it's about being clear on your time frame and making your investment decisions in line with your age and financial stage.
Yes, and your view on investing as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
How
So
you
we'll send through a risk profiling tool as well if you're interested, and you can weigh that up with your time frame that you've got the money in super and your personal risk profile.
Yeah, and most risk profiles will take your time frame into consideration when it tells you what type of investor that you are.
Great. So is there anything else you want to add to super being safe, Danielle? Like, obviously the government have a fair incentive to keep super tax effective for everyone, because obviously we are looking down a view that there are, as we said before, going to be a larger, longer living retired population. So it takes pressure off the welfare system. So that's why it's pretty safe to say that super will continue being a tax effective place to put your long term investments.
That's true, but I think the question around safety is the actual investment side, and keep in mind this is where the more involved you are in your own investment, the better. So you have investment choice in your super fund, and you can look at your risk profile, and that will help you decide: are you someone who likes to be more aggressive, or are you more cautious in your investments? You've got APRA regulating investors and to protect you in that sense. This question is purely around the investment. Everything has risk, but there are much more defensive style investing that's our options for you, as well as aggressive.
So someone said, at what age should you stop investing your super aggressively in the high growth options? And she said, I'm currently balanced at 38 and think it should be more high growth. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I guess the view is that anything between 5 and 7 years, anything above that is considered long-term investing. And you got to keep in mind that ideally, when you hit retirement, you don't just don't take all your money out and use it. You actually have it still invested. So if we're living 20, 30 years in retirement, you still have a long period of time there of investment. So keep that in mind, as always, that the longer time you're investing, the more aggressive you can be. But it really is a personal thing. With the concern about, I'm sure that this individual is getting around balanced, is that that although balance is half the money is being defended, half the money is you're trying to grow. And if the markets are doing well, you won't do as well with your defensive money. But so in the long term, the concern is that you're missing out on opportunity because you've gone too conservative. So I think that's where that advisor is coming from.
Great. So, about getting help, where there's questions that will come up through different phases. Even if we sort of get our super sorted now, it's something that we need to check in as our financial age and stage shifts along the way. Where can we get more help?
Yeah, my view is that if you can afford good advice, you go when you're starting out and help you set the stage when you're midstream and you've got a mortgage or dependents and you're in your accumulation stage, and then again close to retirement. But a lot of funds offer a service around their super that is at no cost to the members. And it's a great way to start with information and getting an idea of what to do with your super and your insurance through super without having to pay for it in addition to that. So have a look around and check with your fund, and if you have that service, by all means use it.
Great. And yeah, you're right that we may as well use it if the service is there. There's one more question about investments, and then we'll wrap up. Can we choose where
Okay.
super is invested, i.e., asset classes, direct property, Australian shares, etc., or do we have to do what they choose to invest for us?
Okay, almost all the funds have some sort of investment choice. And what they'll usually give you is a few choices that we call mixed, which means that they've already decided some, like 70% will be in shares and 10% in cash and 20% in infrastructure. Or they'll have just the asset class. So you have a choice where you can have it pre-mixed for you, or you can mix it up a bit yourself and say, no, I want to choose. So I'll choose the I'll choose the option that's 100% domestic shares, and I'll put all my money in that, or I'll put 20% in there. I don't know of many funds that don't have some type of investment choice. However, most members do not make a choice. And so there will be a default option that the fund will choose. So they'll put you in that default. And in almost all cases, it will be a balanced or more aggressive arrangement. So it'll be a mix between the asset classes. So you don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Great. Did that answer that question? I think so. And so obviously, if you want to get far more involved, there's self-managed super options. We're not going to talk about those today, and you've got to definitely get professional advice if you are considering going down that track. And then also there are other super funds that give you a little bit more involvement in your investing choices than others. But as Danielle said, all super funds will give you some sort of choice. Great. Any final tips, Danielle, as we wrap up?
Yeah, just for our members who are in their 20s or 30s, keep in mind that if you don't have dependents, that the most important thing you need to look at with your insurance is what's going to happen if I'm 25 years old and something happens to me and I never work again. So you really need to focus on cover to protect yourself to your retirement age. And keep in mind that, the sooner you get started boosting your super, the better. And what I mean by that is that, you've got compounding interest on your side. So if you start putting even a small amount in now, like in your early 20s, you will have a lot more at retirement than someone who starts putting in the same amount or twice as much 20 years down the track. And if you're close to your 40s and 50s, it's not too late to start thinking about your super, your retirement, and to get some advice and start making some decisions that are going to make a big difference for you going forward.
Thank you so much, Danielle, and we really appreciate our partnership with Hester and what you're enabling us to do, delivering these free webinar series and workshops and online programs across Australia. So thank you very, very much for your time and insights and information today. For those of you online, thank you very much for joining us. Please share, what you learned or an action step that you're going to take away. As the objective of this webinar is really for everyone to go away and make one tweak or just double check one thing to make sure you're on track to build the size nest egg that you want. So check out. We will send you an email that will link to a blog that will have the slides, the recording, and a few links to any other resources that we have discussed today. If you've got any other questions, Danielle and I will be online for a little, for 5 or 10 minutes longer. And otherwise, thank you very, very much for joining us today, and good luck sorting your super.